We rushed into the ER, nothing could be done. He had gone.
Please don't waste your life!
8 years ago, on the 8th day of that month, August 8th, 2014, my little brother, Jonathan Rockland Snyder, went on to be with Christ. Now, I wanted to point out a few things in regards to the significance of the story that surrounded this day. And so if you have a quick moment, I would challenge you to listen to all the way to the end, because I believe there's something here, there's some things here that I believe are far greater for me to share with you, and this is why I'm making this video, so hang on tight really quickly. Let me just give you the backstory. August 8th of 2014, I woke up, so did my other brothers, and we got out and got ready to go to what we did once a month called the Men's Prayer Breakfast in Lewistown, Montana. We got up, which just means we went to McDonald's, and Dad bought us all cheap McDonald's food, and we sat around, we talked about politics, and we prayed, as we should have, and talked about God and the church and the relationship between us and the people around us and things like that. And we went home. This particular morning was a fairly small, close-knit morning because only one other person came from our church, and otherwise it was just myself, my brothers, my dad, and this one other person. And we got to talking probably about halfway through the meal, and my little brother makes this statement kind of out of nowhere. This is Jonathan, the one who passed away. He made this statement, "Daddy," and he looked like he'd been thinking a little bit. He said, "Daddy, I'm the youngest in our family, so that must mean I'm gonna die last. I'm gonna be the last to die." I don't know if he was sitting there doing some math or whatever, how he came to this conclusion or what brought it up in his mind. But I went on to explain that it's not always the case, because, for example, we had a little cousin who passed away the year before, but from cancer, and she was very young. And so what I came down to is, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. I'm not guaranteed the rest of this day. We don't know when our life's gonna end. And we kind of ended right there with that, and we went home, and I sat down around in a family circle that we had going, and we opened up our Bibles, and we got into our devotions that day. And as we were reading through the scriptures, we were coming to the book of Philippians, and we had just started the book of Philippians this day. This was the book that Paul had wrote to the church in Philippi, and he begins to challenge them on some very, very deep levels that we did not know the significance of at the time. And as we read through it, one person at a time, one verse at a time, my dad would read verse 1, my mom would read verse 2, Sam, my older brother, would read verse 3, I would read verse 4, Joanna, my younger sister, would read verse 5, Timothy would read verse 6, and Johnny would read verse 7, and so on and so forth throughout the whole chapter. And we discussed it if we felt we needed to discuss it some more. And when we got about halfway through, or 3/4 of the way through the chapter, we came to a few verses that not only were illuminated that day, but were lifelines for the days that follow. This is Philippians chapter 1, verses 20 through 23. I'm just going to read them for you. "According to my earnest expectation and my hope," this is Paul speaking about himself, "that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but that with all boldness, as always, so now also Christ shall be magnified in my body, whether it be by my life or by my death." I want Christ to be magnified in my body, whether it's by my life or by my death. And Johnny went on to read this verse, "For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." And then Dad read verse 22, where it says, "But if I live in the flesh, this is the fruit of my labor, yet what I shall choose I wot not." Or I wrestle with this concept, with this struggle that on the inside. And here's the struggle that Paul was wrestling with, and that was super significant to us in the days to follow. My mom read this verse, "For I am in a strait betwixt two." There's something that I see moving forward. "Having the desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better." And then he goes on to, in verse 24 in the following chapter, goes on to state how he desires to also be with them, to help edify them in the body of Christ and to help them learn and grow. Paul made the statement that if I die, Christ is going to be glorified. And what we did not know is that very evening, my little brother Jonathan would have a virus travel up his spine and shut his brain down. He went to sleep and woke up with Jesus. Not only did we read that passage, and not only did Jonathan read the passage where it says, "For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain," he also took that verse and wrote it down in his little prayer journal that day. But needless to say, all through that day and even the day prior, as my parents took us to the doctors the day prior, we were checked up. We had the full checkup thing going on because we all had a cough. They checked us up and they said, you guys go home and go get some sleep. And we did. And the next day, the very next day, my little brother goes down to take a nap in the afternoon. Little cranky, but he was the youngest, so we kind of expected him to be a little cranky. And he wakes up with Jesus. Really put into perspective, here's why I'm even saying this. It put into perspective the fragility of our life, of my life, of his life. And we went on and tried to do all we could do. We rushed into the ER, nothing could be done. He had gone. The next day we woke up and in shock almost. Dad made this decision to read through this passage in which we read through the day prior, not even thinking about all the different elements that were included in that passage. And as we read through, we heard basically a note from heaven, from God to us to say, it's okay. I had you take him to the doctor so you didn't blame yourself. I had Johnny think about eternity because his time was coming to an end. I had you all read a passage about life and death and the amazing thing it is to go on to be with Christ, and how God will be glorified even more in our death sometimes, and how God is in control of our timing on this side. Don't waste your life. We are called to live this life in perspective of eternity, especially those of us as believers. And so are we being a living testimony with our lives? Are you working out today as though it would be your last day, not neglecting some of the future things that we must consider, but also not being anxious for tomorrow's needs, because we don't even know if we'll wake up tomorrow. Don't let that mortify you, but let that encourage you. Let that charge you. Let that help you understand that every day that we wake up is a gift. And when God decides to take us home, we need to trust that God has a purpose and a plan, even in the things that we don't understand. God will bring you through, as he has brought my family through years and years of a grieving process over the loss of someone who is very close to us. I'm sure there are people listening that have felt very similar or the same type of grief. And my heart goes out to you, but I want you to understand that life is short. Death is sure. What are you doing about it? Are you living for him? I love y'all.